Okay, in this tutorial, we're going to go over artboards, different ways to create artboards in Illustrator, as well as creating swatches in Illustrator here. So I'm going to start off with a new document. So I'm going to go File, New, and I'm going to do a 3000 by 3000 pixel size document right here. Make sure that you have 300 ppi, which is like DPI for the resolution right there. And so on artboards, one way you can create multiple artboards is this right here at the beginning of the document right here. So normally when you create a new document in Illustrator, it'll just be one artboard. You press create and it'll look like this. And let me close that out. So alternatively, you can have multiple artboards just by pressing this number up. I can add as many as I want right there and press create. And so here's an example where you have two artboards here. And so the advantage of having artboards is that you're able to have multiple documents up at the same time. So if you have kind of one idea for a design right here, you can kind of have it on one page, and then you can have another idea on a second page and kind of divide up that way instead of having some overly crowded document right here where you're trying to fit your palette and multiple designs and all that stuff. Additionally, when showing your work to clients and things like that, you can export this out as a multi-page PDF. So using Artboards, you're able to kind of line up a professional looking arrangement here for people to kind of take a look at your designs here. So creating the artboard, you can do it at the beginning when you're creating a new document right there. And alternatively, there's a few other ways we can create multiple artboards here. So I'm just going to create one document right here, or sorry, one artboard document right here. So another way you can create multiple artboards is if you go down to this button right here. So it's two squares right there. And if you don't see it on your panel right here, you can go to Window and then down to Artboards right there. And one thing that's nice here is you can see it's not selected right here. So if you're having trouble finding it, for instance, you can go to Window and then down to Artboards, and you can see that it automatically pulls up the panel that you need right here. So the way that this panel works is pretty straightforward. And right here, I could just add a new artboard by pressing this button right here. And you can see it creates something called Artboard 2. And we have multiple artboards going right there. And I can just keep adding documents right here. And you can see it kind of has to fit within this overall layout right here. But you can create a bunch of them right here. And so you can add them. You can also delete them by having one selected and pressing this trash can right here. And so that's another way you can create artboards. Let me just add these back here. So additionally, there's this button right here, which is rearrange artboards. So in here, you can set the number of columns, but you can also change like the spacing right here and the way the layout progresses as you add new artboards. And so right now, the spacing is only 20 pixels right there, which is pretty small. So if you wanted to be like 100 pixels between each artboard right there, you can see it kind of created a gap right there. So you're able to kind of space that out. And let's see here. Additionally, you can double click right here and you can see the information of each artboard right here. So let me cancel that. So this is now called Artboard 4 because when I was demonstrating how to create these artboards, I added and then deleted artboards 2 and 3. So that's why this is called Artboard 4 right now. And that's this one right here. And if I double click right here, you can see that it gives us some of the information on it. So we can see the pixel size, things like that. And I can delete it as well from there just by double clicking right there. And so the final thing I want to bring up with artboards here is sometimes you don't want your documents to be the exact same proportions as one another. And so that is where this tool right here into the toolbar comes up. So this is the artboard tool. And so you can use the artboard tool to create duplicates of artboards. You can create entirely new artboards and you can kind of draw it in at whatever proportion you want here. So I'm going to delete the second artboard right here and keep showing this here. So with this button right here, so that's the artboard tool, you can see that, let's start with this here. So we have this one artboard right here and it says artboard 1. And so I can use that tool to resize my current document right there manually. And then if I just press select or press V, it'll kind of accept the new proportions that I made right there. I'll just press edit undo to change that. Alternatively, I can draw in a new artboard, just like that. And click that and accept that. So now I have a second artboard right here. Additionally, with the artboard tool is I can move an artboard around. So if I want these to be positioned differently, or if I want this to be on the other side, for instance, I can pull that up right there. You can see that I have the smart guide. So that's that purple line that shows up that just shows me that I'm lining things up with one another right here. So that's what that purple line means that shows up. If you don't see that right there, just go to, where's that, view, and then smart guides right here. And that'll help you kind of line up artboards, but also objects and things like that. That'll make your life easier as you're working here. So I can change the proportions right here. And so that's another way that you can use the artboard tool right here. And by the way, I deleted that by just using the artboard tool, selecting this artboard right here, and then pressing delete on my keyboard. So that's yet another way that you can delete right here. So you can see in Illustrator, and this is true with most of Adobe softwares, there's a bunch of different ways you can kind of do different things. And just depending on your own personal style, you can work your own way here to kind of achieve the same effect here. So one other thing I want to show with the artboards, and this is a really helpful one right here, is I'm just going to go ahead and make just some object in my artboard right here. And let's just, okay, so before I show the next artboard technique, I want to show you all a really helpful shortcut here in Adobe Illustrator. So this has to do with copying and pasting. So you can copy and paste things the old-fashioned way, which is pressing Command C to copy and then Command V to paste. So Command C and Command V, and it'll just kind of paste almost a little randomly, like where it goes right there. So that's one way that you can copy and paste something. Additionally, you can select an object like that and go to Edit, Copy, or Command C, or you can do Shift Command V, or go to Edit, Paste in Place right there. So Shift Command V will paste another circle right on top of that first ellipse, that first circle that we created right there. And so now if I hold Shift and drag it off, you can see I can create a copy that way. So that's one way you can create copies. Alternatively, and I use that Shift Command V to copy and paste a whole lot for kind of my personal process right here. So you'll see me do that a lot in future demonstrations where I have an object, I press Command C, then Shift Command V, and then I've created a copy one on top of the other right there. And then finally, another way to copy and paste objects right here is if you're on a Mac, if you hold Option on your keyboard, and I would imagine on a PC that would be Alt, so you can see right here, this is my selection tool cursor right now. And then if I hold Option on my keyboard, it changes to a black arrow and then a white arrow underneath it. And so that's an indication that this is about to duplicate this and kind of do the equivalent of a copy and paste right there. So you can see right there, I just let go of Option, then I hold Option again, and I can click and drag again, and you can see I'm able to use the Smart Guide to kind of keep them all in line with each other. But the Option tool is a really quick way that you can make multiple copies really quickly right here. So, and that'll be helpful for another artboard thing I'm going to show you here. So in addition to the Option method of duplicating is I can hold Option, but if I hold Shift on my keyboard, so I'm holding Option and Shift at the same time on my keyboard, or I hold Option, click it, then hold Shift, and you can see I'm able to create a duplicate, and it keeps everything in line while you're dragging it. So when you hold Shift, when duplicating objects, you can kind of keep them in line with each other. So I can also duplicate multiple objects at the same time. So you can create a ton of duplicates really quickly just by, for instance, holding Option, clicking, holding Shift to keep it in line, again, holding Option, holding Shift, keeping it in line. Then I can hold Shift, select all of those, then hold Option again, duplicate that, hold Option, click, hold Shift. And so you can see you can really create a lot of duplicates really rapidly using that shortcut. So Option, hold Shift, drag it over here, and I'll just change this to another color. Okay, so I have the shape right here. And so this is all circling back to the last thing I want to show you all about artboards. So let's say that I have this artboard right here and I have this black star with the pink eyes right here. And I want to kind of try out a different color scheme for the design. So this is where the artboard can also be helpful here. And so this can be really helpful to kind of help yourself avoid overworking an idea. Or if you're worried that you kind of have a design that you like, but you want to keep working on it, but you want to kind of keep that backup in case you don't like the new direction that you explore. This is something that I do a lot right here in that circumstance. So I'm going to do the artboard button right here. And then same thing as before with the option button to duplicate objects, you can, with the artboard tool, I can duplicate the artboard as well. So I'm going to do the artboard tool, hold option, click, and then drag. Oh, whoops. Let's see here. Let's try that again. So I'm going to hold option, click and drag. There we go. And so you can see that I was able to duplicate the artboard and the design that's within it. Take note right here that the layer gets copied within itself right there. So if you have like a lot of layers organized, there might be a step of organization you need to do to just kind of move the new layers, to divide it that way. But it's really not that bad. And then so now what I'm able to do is just click in the shape, and then I can try, new color schemes, try out new ideas here. And so this can be really helpful. Just if you're not sure about what color palette you want to kind of explore for a design, is you can kind of come up with multiple ideas quickly using these artboards and copying and pasting the design that you have within the artboard. And yeah, alternatively, just the very last thing I'll say on artboards here, so I'm just going to delete this artboard, then I'll delete this object that's within it, is you could also, hypothetically, have an artboard, a one artboard situation like this. Click this plus button in the artboard panel to duplicate it. And then I could select that design, press Command C, and then create a new layer right here. Then press Command V, and then paste it into a new design, and then use the smart guides to kind of help guide it right there. So those are kind of some different things that you can kind of do with artboards right there. So continuing on this discussion here. So that kind of covers artboards. And what I want to talk about now are swatches or color palettes. So I am just going to delete that second artboard. And when I'm working on a design, something I personally like to do is I like to just kind of create another artboard. I usually kind of keep it vertical, something like this. And the reason that I keep it kind of thin like this is so I'm going to put my color palette up here. And what that does is, because I'm working on a laptop, is so I have a little bit of limited screen space. So if this was like a really wide artboard like this, if I wanted off to my left or right, I couldn't see all of my colors that were way over here, because I want to keep my eyes on this design right here. So typically I try to kind of have the character or the thing that I'm designing be a larger artboard right here, and then the palette be something smaller, so that I can just kind of quickly kind of grab colors if I need them, or take a look without having to pan around too much right there. So, I keep it vertical like that. You could also keep it horizontal at the bottom or at the top if you'd prefer to work that way as well. Let's see here. So Command 0, let's try that again. Oh, it's because the artboards. Okay, so to create a new color palette right here, I'm going to use that same duplicate kind of technique I was showing before. So what I like to do is I like to start with a rectangle right here, and I'll hold Shift so that it comes out square right there. I'm pressing V. Oops. Let's zoom in on this just a little bit. Pressing V to kind of zoom in and move it around. I'm going to get rid of the stroke on this, so you can do that either here or down here. So I'm just clicking right there and then going to the red X button right there to remove the stroke. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to press V, then hold Option on my keyboard, and then Shift and drag it down. And then just going to repeat that step a few times. And you can see right here, you see those purple guides right there. So that's the smart guide right there. You can see the vertical purple guides are showing me how I can keep the spacing even between these different swatches. And I find that to be pretty useful just to kind of keep this looking professional. So let's see here. So Option, Shift, drag down. Oops. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so that's pretty good. So, typically I like to have options here. I don't want to overwhelm myself with too many options, but so I might make a row of 6, hold Shift, select them all, then hold Option, and then click and drag over right here. And you could even add more if you wanted to. Oops. And click over there. Okay. So there's different ways that we can kind of construct a color palette. We can use color theory, or we can kind of find reference images and use the eyedropper tool to kind of discover palettes that way and kind of brainstorm off of that. And so I'm going to go with the latter method right there. And let's see here. So under this folder right here, I have this image that I've been using in class. And so to bring in a raster image into Illustrator, you just click it and then drag it over right here. And it might take a second for it to load. There we go. And something I like to do here is I'll press V and make that a little bit larger right here. And just so you know, by default, Illustrator is going to be linking this file right here. So so I have kind of my palette over here on this layer right here. And you can see when I find the raster image, it's right there and it says linked file right there. And so what that means is that this image is not embedded into our Illustrator document when we save it. When we open the Illustrator document, it's telling, how do I say this? The computer, let me just open, so I'm going to Windows and links to help explain this, is when I click on this, Illustrator is kind of telling itself, okay, look for this file on the desktop under the CDE 252 folder, and you'll find this PNG file right there. And so that's what a linked file is. And so the advantage of a linked file is it takes less room in the file size, but the disadvantage is that if I were to email this Illustrator document to someone without also attaching that image, the image wouldn't show up when they opened it on their personal computer. So something you can do to fix that, if you think that'll be an issue for you, and I typically like to do this with when I'm bringing rastered images into Illustrator to help avoid that, is I'll select the raster image, go up to Window, and then open the links folder right here. So that'll bring this folder right here, and you can see that this is a linked file because it has that little chain link right there. And you can embed it by, if you see this little triple line button in the top right, if I click it, you can see there's a ton of options right here for things that we can do with the image, but we can embed the image into the document by going down to there. So again, it's Window, and then find the links panel right here. And then it's this button right here in the top right. And then you go to embed images, this chain link, it'll take a second, but that chain link goes away. And now that image will be embedded in this document when we save it here. And you can see this used to say linked image, and now it just says image right there. And for future reference too, you can see that triple line button show up on different panels sometimes. And so that's the equivalent of kind of like right clicking and finding an extra options setting. So for instance, in the layers menu, and I'll talk about this down the road, I kind of use this panel sometimes for a few things like this option right here, stuff like that, to kind of access further options that you might not normally see in different panels. So continuing on here, to develop a color palette, a lot of times when you have a nice photo from nature, there'll be a coherent color palette embedded within the image almost. And so if you find an image that you like that kind of contains some of the colors, some of the associations that you might want with your image, something you can do, and I usually do this to kind of create a starting point for myself, and I'll kind of develop it and add on to it on my own afterwards, is so I have this image right here, and I'll select these different boxes right here that I created to develop my palette. And I'll just hold I on my keyboard or press this eyedropper tool. and pick different areas within the document right here, or sorry, within the image. And there we go. And so you can see as I'm doing the color picker, and there's this guy in a wetsuit right here. And you can see when I color pick in there, that's probably one of the lighter areas of the wetsuit. Let me go down here and pick one of the darker images or darker areas right there. Something that's nice with using images like this, if you find a dark area in a photo, a lot of the time, hopefully, you can see when I double click the color over here that it wasn't at a true black right there. It was kind of at a dark blue. And a lot of the times it can kind of help glue your image together and look better when you start using image or something that's not like a true black or a true white a lot of the times. Now that's not a universal rule, but it's just it can be helpful to kind of create a glue to your color palette. For instance, if I'm doing like an oil painting or something like that, you'll never ever see me reach for a true black color just because it'll kind of kill the vibrancy of a painting a lot of the times if there's kind of not at least like a shade of hue within it. And so up here, you'll start to kind of see me start to kind of pick colors and kind of just start to vibe off of it a little bit here. And maybe, instead of picking from down here, I pick off of this color that I created kind of out of inspiration of the color palette right here. So maybe I want some purples. Maybe I like the way green and orange goes together a lot of the time. So maybe like this. And so one reason that this is helpful is I'm changing the hue down here, but I've kind of the information. So let me talk about this for a second. So I have this color right here that was color picked out of there. So it's kind of a greenish color. And right here, the color is kind of like a pastel where you can see it's not fully saturated right there. So if I were to kind of try to pick an orange and like start from scratch, so let's just click on this image right here, I might start all the way over here and that can be good, but if you have like a super saturated color, so let me just pull this to full saturation, that can look a little out of place compared to these other images right here. So something I'll do sometimes is I will do the eyedropper tool and pick a color from in here or something like that, then double click and then kind of switch my hues a little bit and kind of try to discover something a little bit similar. So it'll have kind of a similar, have a coherency to it because it's got a similar hue saturation to it, essentially. So I'm going to just kind of add some warm colors into this just to give myself a few more options. You can see I'm kind of keeping everything, at least for this color palette, close to this right here. So I'm going to make an alternate of this color. Okay, so you can see I have like a pretty full color palette that I can work off of, and these colors, I might not even end up using all of them, but this can be a really good starting point. And so one thing you can do is you can kind of work this way, just have your color palette off to the side, and then whenever you want to change the color of something, you can select select the image, then select I, and then try these different colors right here. And just kind of try different things out. And that can be a great way to work here. So one thing that can be helpful beyond that is to have this color palette right here. But something I like to do is I like to have it in two places. And to do that, I'll create swatches. So let's talk about swatches specifically here. So I'll select all of these. And I'm going to go find under the panels, I'm going to look for the swatches panel, which looks like this. You can also, if you can't find that right there, you can go to Windows and then find swatches down here and it'll kind of pull it up for you automatically. And so swatches are a palette that you can kind of save to your computer separately. So you can kind of share swatches. I can save this into kind of like long-term memory. So if I open up another document, I can just open it up and have the swatch load in right here. And it's additionally helpful because sometimes when we're like working with gradients and stuff like that, which is what I'll hopefully show in my next video, is it's a lot easier to access your swatches, I feel like, than it is to access like use your eyedropper tool over here. So it'll just kind of, this only takes 1 second here and it'll speed up your process a lot. So to create swatches from a full kind of palette like this, and I'm going to intentionally not select the ones on the bottom here just so that we can show how you can load one at a time later on. So let's just say that you've kind of created these and then you start working and then later you decide you want to create a few more colors to your palette right here. So to create a swatch group right here, I'll just select all these panels that I created right there. And then in swatches, I'm just going to click this button right here. So it's called a new color group. I'll click on that and I'll call this online demo and press OK. And so now you can see there's all those colors that I selected up there got pulled into this group right here. And in addition to that, if you want to later add more colors to it, like these three that I didn't select on purpose down here, is you kind of have to do this in a specific order. So I'll click on this object right here. Then I have to click on that folder right there. Let me just try this one more time. Sometimes if your stroke is kind of on top instead of your fill, that can kind of keep this from working. So if it doesn't work for you, just make sure that your color is set on top right over here. So let's try that again. So I'm going to select this, and I'm using the V select tool right here. Hold shift, select that, and then I'll press this plus button and then press OK. And so I'll add that new swatch in there. So again, I'm using the select tool, making sure that the fill is on top. Then I'll click on this, hold shift, click on that folder. Let's try that again. Okay. Oh, yeah, you might not need to hold shift. And then press plus and okay. Let's do this one more time for this one. So select that, then don't hold shift. Sorry, I misspoke before with that. And then, so again, just select that, then press that, and you'll press plus and then add it. And then, so from here, the swatches are kind of loaded in, but you want to save this. And so to save this, all you need to do is just click on the color group right here. And you can see it's already named online demo. Click down here. So there's this little button right here that's like a library button. And you can see you can open up existing preset swatches down here. So you can kind of search for other swatches. But here at the bottom, you can see user defined. So these are swatches that you've already created yourself that you can save. So I'll just save the swatch right here. And I will call this again online demo and press save. And so now when I open up other Illustrator documents, I can open up that swatch right there. So just to show that, I'm going to make an entirely new document right here, press OK. And then if I want to load that swatch from before, you can see that swatch isn't there in this new document, but I can just click on this folder button right here, go to user defined, and then find that online demo one. And then all you have to do is it'll show up in this new panel right here. And you'll just click on the folder and then it'll appear over here into your swatches. And then I'll just kind of close that out. And so now I have my swatches loaded into that other document. Something else you could do as well is if you'd rather just work with the direct colors like this, is you can just select this group right here, press Command C, go over here, press Command V, then you have it right there as well. So that way, I like to have both of them accessible right here. And again, I'll kind of show that in future tutorials why that might be useful to have it both on your document like this and also right here.